Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Richard again, and I thought now would be a pretty appropriate time to sort of look back on the last week from the evolution of combat and just sort of think general opinions and whatnot on how it's been and what's wrong with it, what's good about it, and sort of a general discussion about what I personally think about the evolution of combat. I'm going to start off by saying I do like it more than I liked in the beta. I personally just found it way too confusing. Maybe the Combat Academy actually helped me out with that a lot. But I mean, generally, actually, I kind of enjoy using abilities. Like, I don't actually use momentum at all, really. I haven't actually done that much in the way of Slayer, and I'd imagine if I do Slayer, I'd probably be more inclined to use it. But in general, kind of enjoying the abilities. That's knowing what they're doing now, sort of having a lot of fun playing them, seeing how much damage you can cause. It actually feels kind of good, the amount of damage you can cause with some of the thresholds. I don't really like the ultimates that much, but I sort of use them at the end of fights and whatnot when it would kind of be practical to use it. I just find that it's more practical to use thresholds. Sort of in general, I'd say a positive sort of feel for that how the actual combat works, but I don't think it was at all ready. I think it was kind of bad how poorly done everything was. Like, a lot of things were kind of broken, a lot of things that had been completely not thought about at all. There are a lot of bugs. Like, the number of bugs that there were was kind of ridiculous, and they still haven't fixed a lot of them. Some of the things that really annoy me is just the sort of the small oversights of things, like the fact that you couldn't use the F keys to switch between game tabs once you'd actually like closed the ability bar. I thought that was kind of bad to start with. It's things like the auras don't match up with the weapons anymore when you've got a weapon equipped and an aura activated. They just forgot about that. It's the sort of thing that they just should have noticed, and I don't like the way they've dealt with a lot of the problems. Things like the fight caves. If you see my videos on the fight caves, you'll know that to start with, it was really easy. I found it to be a lot easier than my previous runs, and then they updated it to make it really quite difficult. Like, I'll be honest, I struggled at points. I really did think I was going to run out of food on Jad because I got hit once, and I was like, I probably am going to die. And the way that they dealt with that situation was really bad. First of all, they'd already waited 2 days, by which time surely they should have collected the information to find out what would be best to do with the fight caves, what would make it a balanced and fair thing. Instead, what they did is they simply doubled the health and doubled the healing, and it made it really quite difficult. I thought that was very badly done. I completely disagree with the decision of that. I'm kind of glad they, on a bit more of a positive note, I'm kind of glad they did manage to fix a lot of the bugs. If you do farming, you'll know that it was impossible to water saplings for a while, or seedlings, sorry, and turn them into saplings. And you couldn't even fill up a watering can at a water source. It's just shouldn't have been there. Like, that's the sort of bug that's kind of outrageous, because I just thought, oh yeah, I've got some nice seeds, I might as well use them for a farming run. Go to use my magic watering can. Just doesn't do anything. It doesn't even give me the nothing interesting happens message. And I thought, okay, let's just try a normal watering can. Just use the watering can on the watering trough or whatever it's called. Once again, didn't do anything. It said I didn't even have a watering can in my inventory. I just thought, no. And then what I managed to do eventually was use the magic watering can on the normal watering can to fill it up. But then the watering can still didn't work. I thought that was very bad. They really should have sorted that out. I'm kind of disappointed that it was 2 days, and it's the sort of thing that just shouldn't have happened in the first place. Dungeoneering is another one to talk about, in the way that you seem to be kind of like, to start with, it was really hard to kill the mages. You couldn't hit them with damage. That was back when I was using momentum quite a lot. And on top of that, I found that the primal warriors, they had about 1k health, so you would one hit them, and very low defense. I don't understand how they forgot that. Like, how come everything else had high health except the primal warriors? And yeah, I finally think that there were a lot of bugs that should have been sorted out. Now, the next thing I want to mention is the way that weaknesses worked. If you don't know, if when you click on a monster, when you've got a monster targeted, if you go onto your what was previously the attack styles page, there'll be information on the monster and whatnot, and it actually lists the weakness of the monster, which on one hand is kind of cool, but I don't like how you're like pretty much forced into using a certain attack style to do Slayer. It annoys me that I pretty much have to own all the chaotics and things to get effective DPS, which is a lot of dungeoneering, to be honest. And things like range, I'm not a very high range level, and I don't like how it kind of feels like you have to use certain sort of bows and whatnot. I kind of like just to be able to like take maybe a chaotic crossbow and just be able to take them on like that, but now it's better off to use a crystal bow or a Zarek bow or whatever in certain scenarios, and that kind of irritates me a little bit. But on a bit more of a positive note, I kind of like how when you wield a shield, the damage, that you sort of sacrifice a fair amount of damage, but so you can have a hell of a lot more protection. I think that's really effective. It's kind of how it should have been in the past. Like, previously, shields weren't really that much to to talk about. They weren't really that amazing, and defenders obviously much more important. And now that that's kind of changed around a bit, it's kind of nice. And so and especially with the shield abilities, where you can use rejuvenate and get crazy amounts of health, I think's kind of cool. And so I think they've done a good job on that, and especially with two-handed and one-handed abilities and things like that kind of make it considerably more appealing to use certain attack styles and whatnot. But the way that works brings me on to my next point, which is the number of action bars. Now, because we're sort of forced into using different attack styles for different monsters and whatnot, I think it's kind of bad how they've only given us 5 action bars. Personally, I think it should be more like 8, maybe 8 or 10, because I have one for each combat style. I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, it only takes up 3, but then I kind of like another one for skilling. I kind of like another one for the shields of all the combat styles, and maybe I want to alternate. Like maybe I'd like to have one that's got the two-handed, and then they've got one that's got the dual-wielding abilities. And I don't like the idea that I have to mess around with my action bar, and then probably halfway through my Slayer task, find I need to change it because it's not optimum, and things like that kind of irritate me a little bit. But it's obviously not a massive, huge issue. But one thing I really don't like is how free-to-play have one action bar. I just think this is just really, really unfair to them. They're basically tied into one attack style at any one time. Because I quite often use control and then the numbers so that I can switch between my action bars. Because 12 slots, quite frankly, isn't enough for a lot of situations, especially dungeoneering, where you want to add things like maybe like prayers, your gate stones, all that sort of various information you want. And that's kind of, I don't know, one action bar I feel is really unfair. And my final point is another negative one, unfortunately, is tagging. I kind of like the idea, like in concept, tagging works quite well. If you don't know what tagging is, basically when you attack a monster, an asterisk appears next to it, and then you're locked to that monster. Like, so that monster will still be able to be damaged by other people, but if that monster dies, regardless of how much damage you do compared to the other player, you will get the drop and you will get the XP. Which is very kind of WoW-esque. If you've ever played WoW, you'll know that if you start attacking an enemy, it becomes yours immediately, which is kind of cool, sort of maybe for WoW, because you're not really killing masses and masses of enemies at any one time, but it's very open to abuse in WoW. Sorry, not in WoW, in RuneScape, because let's say, for example, someone is just AFK cannoning down a Dagonoth or something, then another player could just come along and tag all of them, get all the loot and all the Slayer XP and all the combat XP, and it's kind of broken. Basic mobs, obviously not that much of an issue, but we went to the KBD, and there was this leech guy that basically we called it leeching, and there was this guy using mage, and he essentially attacked the KBD, but because it was a lower combat level, he really didn't do any damage at all, and so we managed to finish it off, and then we were wondering why we weren't getting any loot share splits or anything. I mean, obviously it's only the KBD, but the way that that's possible is really bad. I mean, that means that someone could go to Nex, tag it, and then an entire a mass could happen, and then he would get the drops. Like, he would literally he doesn't even have to have done any damage, and he might get Torva. What's with that? I personally think that's really unfair, but that's how it works. Anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it here because I don't want to create too much of a long video, because obviously that would just depress people like having to watch like a 20-minute video of me pretty much complaining about the evolution of combat, even though in general I like it. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's kind of good, but it needs a lot of work. It probably shouldn't have been released when it was released. I assume they pretty much released it because they'd ran out of content that didn't need the EOC. So maybe that's what it is. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope this is sort of a bit of a change up from guides, sort of a general discussion you might be able to listen to while you escape. But I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye.